My name is Olivia Jameson. I'm 39 years old. I used to be the pride of my family, the tenured economics professor with a stable income and a corner office. For 12 years I lived the life my parents told me would guarantee security, good grades, prestigious degrees and a pension. But 5 years ago I did something unthinkable in their eyes. I walked away from all of it. I gave up my tenure, cashed out my savings, and started building a climate tech startup from scratch. They called it reckless. I called it finally breathing. The judgment started quietly, with confused looks at holidays and subtle questions about when I'd go back to something more predictable. Then it got louder. Text messages from my mother disguised as concern, financial lectures over Sunday dinner, and polite dismissals from my father, who never saw tech as a real industry. My younger sister Lauren, a lawyer with a perfect smile and an even more perfect LinkedIn profile, would nod along and sip her wine, clearly agreeing, but nothing stung more than the message I received last Thursday. Family check-in, Thursday 7 p.m. Olivia needs guidance, the subject line of a group email that made me feel like a failed group project. I hadn't been back to Charleston in months. Their home, that colonial brick fortress, filled with polished silver and unspoken expectations, hadn't changed, but I had. I pulled into the driveway in my dusty 2011 Subaru, parked beside Lauren's fresh-off-the-lot Audi and Dad's immaculate Tesla, and sat there for a moment. In my hands was the message I hadn't told them about, an embargoed Forbes feature, Top 30 Women Redefining Green Tech. I was number 7. The article would drop at exactly 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 hour after my family would attempt to fix me. Inside, the house smelled like pot roast and disapproval. My parents had already taken their seats in the living room, as if this were some kind of intervention. Lauren was there too, tapping away at her phone. I sat down in silence. "We've all been worried about you," my mother began, using her softest voice, the same tone she used when telling distant relatives I had taken a break from academia. My father leaned forward, elbows on knees. "You were on track for greatness, Olivia, but now, it's like you've disappeared." I could feel my hands go still in my lap. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I let them go on, watching their faces twist with a mixture of concern, disappointment, and self-righteous clarity. They thought I needed rescuing. They thought I was drowning. But what they didn't know was that I had already built the boat, and tonight, they were about to see it sail. As they continued their carefully rehearsed monologue, my phone buzzed. It was Dev, my CTO. "Forbes drops in 10. You ready?" I glanced up at my family. "Go on," I said gently, meeting their eyes. "I'm listening." I knew what was coming, not their intervention, but the moment their entire perception of me would shatter, not in anger but in awe, and I wouldn't have to raise my voice once. I remember a time when their approval was everything to me. As a child, I memorized piano pieces just to see Dad's nod. I chose economics over literature, because Mom said writers live paycheck to paycheck. I stayed late at university lectures, built extra credit programs and brought home awards, all for the dinner table, praise that came in crumbs. So when I left the university, it wasn't just a career shift, it was a quiet rebellion. I didn't scream, I didn't fight, I just stopped asking for their applause. That night, as I sat in the middle of their well-decorated living room, surrounded by oil paintings and judgment, it hit me. They didn't see me, not the real me. They saw a projection of who I used to be, the Olivia who colored inside the lines, the obedient academic, the one who picked safe over bold. When I chose my own path, they didn't ask what I was building. They assumed I was broken, and the worst part, I almost believed them. In the first few years, when funding was thin and the nights were long, I'd hear their voices in my head louder than my own. But betrayal doesn't always come in the form of enemies. Sometimes it's the people who claim to love you the most that undermine you with the softest voices. "We just want what's best. You've always been so smart, but maybe you've lost your way." Those comments are daggers dressed in velvet, and I let them in for too long. I let their doubt crawl into my bones and make me question every bold choice I made. Lauren was the golden child, always knew what to say, always wore the right thing. She didn't have to rebel because she was never expected to risk. She was comfortable in the life our parents built. I wasn't. I wanted something real, something mine. But still, it hurt that she never once defended me, never once said maybe Olivia is building something we just don't understand yet. No, she just sipped her Chardonnay and watched the slow erosion of my credibility at every family dinner. That night though, I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain my business or beg them to see me. I just listened, because something inside me had shifted. I didn't need their permission anymore. I was no longer building to prove myself. I was building because I believed in it, and the part of me that once ached for their praise had finally gone quiet. That silence, it wasn't defeat, it was peace. Still, I wondered what would land heavier, the words they'd just said, or the ones they were about to read. My eyes flicked to the clock, 7:57 p.m., 3 minutes until the article went live, 3 minutes until everything they thought they knew about me cracked open, and I wouldn't say a word. The day I left academia, I had no roadmap, just a gut instinct and a stubborn fire that wouldn't leave me alone. My startup wasn't glamorous. In the beginning, it was just me, a borrowed laptop and a garage space I turned into a lab. I focused on soil regeneration tech, not exactly the kind of thing that gets you applause at family dinners, but I wasn't after applause anymore. I was after impact. After years of watching the planet choke on corporate indifference, I knew someone had to build smarter systems, and if that someone was me, so be it. But I didn't tell anyone, not at first, especially not my family. I knew the second I spoke of startups or climate science, I'd be met with furrowed brows and cocktail party dismissals, so I stopped speaking. I stopped explaining. I let the silence do the talking. I registered my LLC in secret. I applied for grants with no backup plan. I cold emailed advisors at midnight, built pitch decks during holidays, and ate canned soup when money ran thin. But every step I kept going, quietly, methodically, without the need to post or perform, because real building is invisible until it is. The first investor came from an unexpected place, a friend of a friend who believed in carbon capture long before it was trending. He saw something in my research. I didn't oversell it, I just showed him the numbers. We closed the deal over coffee in a library study room, and from there, everything started moving. DeFay joined 6 months later, a genius coder with the kind of calm I trusted. We built prototypes with recycled parts, we tested sensors in abandoned plots of land. We failed, a lot, but we learned faster than anyone expected, and the world started noticing. I kept tabs on my family's assumptions like a scientist watching variables. Every snide remark, every awkward pause at dinner, every well-meaning suggestion that I update my resume became fuel, but I didn't react. I didn't correct them when they assumed I was freelancing. I let them believe I was struggling, flailing, because I understood something they didn't. Power grows strongest in silence, and the deeper the roots, the less you need to bloom publicly. And then came the Forbes call. They wanted to feature me, not just as a businesswoman, but as a pioneer in regenerative energy modeling. I didn't ask how they found me. I already knew. Our third round of funding had closed. Our field test in Arizona had stunned the EPA. People were talking, and this time the right ones were listening. The article was beautifully written, honest, bold, everything I had never been allowed to be at the dinner table. It went live, May 16, 8:11 p.m. Eastern, 38 minutes into my parents' intervention. I didn't plan to tell them. I didn't print the article, or bring it up at dinner. I trusted the news to find them on its own. I knew my mother's friend Marlene checked Forbes every Friday evening. I knew Lauren's old college roommate worked in sustainable law. I knew Dad had Google alerts for every name in the family, so I waited, patiently, because sometimes the most powerful sound in the world is the sound of your name being spoken in rooms you never had to enter yourself. It started with a vibration. Lauren's phone lit up first. She tilted the screen just enough to see it without making a scene, but her body tensed, her wine glass paused midair. A flicker of confusion passed across her face before she set the glass down and silently tapped on the notification. Then, her eyes widened, her hand went to her mouth, not in horror but disbelief. My mother noticed. "Everything all right, dear?" she asked. Lauren didn't respond right away. She just stared at me like she was seeing a stranger sitting where her older sister used to be. My father, ever the curious commander, leaned over. "What is it?" he asked, stretching out a hand for the phone. Lauren passed it to him slowly, like it was something sacred, something dangerous. He looked down at the screen, blinked, then blinked again. His jaw tightened. My mother stood up. "What's going on?" she demanded, the soft concern now replaced with a sharper edge. No one answered. The silence filled the room like fog. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I just sat there and let it happen. They read every word. Forbes hadn't held back. They mentioned my departure from academia. They highlighted our patented sensor tech, our expansion plans, the Arizona trials. They quoted me, not the old me, the buttoned-up professor, but the builder, the founder, the woman who dared to walk away from safety. It was all there. my name, my face, and the line that broke their world in half. Olivia Jameson, founder of Terra Halo, is reshaping the way we think about planetary healing. It was Lauren who spoke first. Why didn't you tell us? Her voice cracked, not from anger, but from something deeper, something like shame. I met her gaze and said nothing. What could I say that hadn't already been said by the silence of the past 5 years? My father cleared his throat, but the words didn't come. My mother sat down again, slower this time, as if the weight of everything they thought they knew was pressing against her spine. What they didn't understand, what they never could, was that the silence wasn't punishment, it was protection. I had to disappear from their expectations to become something they couldn't predict. I didn't need to announce every move because I was no longer living a life curated for their comfort. I was building something real, and real things don't need permission to exist. For the first time in my life, I watched them lose control, not because I argued, not because I disrespected them, but because I grew beyond the version of me they had built in their minds, and that version, she had just made the front page of a magazine they respected more than any degree. That version didn't need a seat at their table, she had built her own, and the world had come knocking. The atmosphere in the room had shifted completely. No one was talking about my resume anymore, no one was offering advice. The air hung heavy with realization, not just of what I had achieved, but of how far I had traveled without them. It was my mother who finally broke the silence, her voice barely above a whisper. We didn't know, that's all she said. Not we're proud, not we were wrong, just an acknowledgement of their own ignorance. A small sentence that sounded more like surrender than apology. But I didn't need an apology. What I needed was happening in real time. The collapse of their narrative, the image they had clung to so tightly. The Olivia who needed fixing was gone, and in her place stood someone they didn't have a playbook for. Someone who had failed privately, rebuilt silently, and returned not for approval, but for closure. My silence had done what no confrontation ever could. It had made them face themselves, their lack of faith, their arrogance disguised as concern, their inability to believe that someone could succeed without fitting their mold. Lauren left the room first. She didn't storm out, she didn't cry. She just walked away, phone in hand, eyes downcast. I don't know if she was angry, embarrassed, or just stunned, but for the first time she looked small, not in stature but in certainty. The sister who always had the answers suddenly had none, and maybe that was the beginning of her own reckoning. I hope so. I didn't want revenge, I wanted release, and sometimes the most powerful form of release is watching someone realize they misunderstood you completely. My father stood up next. He didn't say a word, just walked out of the room, and into his study, the same place he used to show me retirement portfolios and job security charts when I was a teenager. The irony wasn't lost on me. He had measured success by stock prices and tenure, never realizing the most valuable asset I'd ever possess was belief in myself. That belief had been forged in his absence, strengthened by his doubt, and now, it had rendered him speechless. My mother stayed seated, eyes glazed over, hands clenched around her pearl necklace. I wondered if she saw herself in me now, the version of herself that never chased her own dreams, because she was too busy sculpting mine. I didn't judge her, I just watched, because there are some moments where words only get in the way, and this was one of them. She needed to sit in the silence she had once demanded from me. I left that night, quietly, no grand speech, no declarations, just a simple goodbye, and the click of the front door behind me. My phone buzzed again. Dev, your article is trending, you're on fire. I looked up at the Charleston sky, vast, calm, and wide open, and for the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not because I'd won, but because I'd let go of the need to be seen, of the hunger to be understood. I didn't need their validation. I had become someone they never imagined, and everything I had ever hoped to be. The drive back to Atlanta was quiet, not the heavy kind of quiet, but the kind that feels earned, like a long exhale after holding your breath for years. I didn't turn on the radio, I didn't call anyone, I just let the wheels hum beneath me, as the city lights disappeared behind the rearview mirror. Every mile that passed felt like a page closing. I wasn't running away from them, I was just done carrying them with me. Back in my apartment, the same modest space I'd lived in during the bootstrap years, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, and reread the article. I didn't cry, I didn't cheer, I just smiled, because I knew what it took to earn every word printed there. The lonely night, the bankrupt near misses, the empty fridge, the days when I felt like I was the only one who believed in me, and now, All of that, every silent sacrifice had transformed into something solid, something undeniable. It wasn't about the recognition, it was about the redemption. Quiet redemption, the kind where you don't throw it in anyone's face, you just exist in your truth, so completely that it speaks louder than your defense ever could. That night in Charleston wasn't revenge, it was resurrection. The version of me they tried to smother under respectability politics and suburban ambition had risen, and she was never going back. Over the next few weeks, I received scattered messages from family. Lauren sent a vague "proud of you" text. My mother forwarded the Forbes article to her book club with a note that read, "My daughter Olivia is doing some interesting work in science." And my father, he sent me a link to a green energy investment firm and said might be worth a call. That was the closest thing to a blessing I would ever get from him, and strangely, it was enough. The funny thing is, once you stop chasing validation, it starts circling back to find you. People from my past began reaching out, old professors, students, even colleagues who once doubted me. They all wanted to connect, to collaborate, to learn more about what I was building. But I didn't rush to respond. I wasn't trying to prove anything anymore. I was just building. Still, always, quietly. Peace doesn't come from applause. It comes from knowing you stayed true to your vision when no one else could see it. It comes from walking into the fire, unannounced, and walking out forged. That night at the family meeting was never about proving them wrong. It was about remembering I was right to trust myself. And now when I look in the mirror, I don't see the girl they tried to fix. I see the woman who outgrew their limitations and never asked for permission to do it.